Good evening. Now 6 o'clock, so we'll call the planning commission meeting of Monday, April 21st to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Barnes,
Present.
Commissioner Urbani. Here. Commissioner Chorin,
Here.
Commissioner Hawley,
Here.
Commissioner Stoker,
Here.
Alderman Stralchuk,
Here.
Mayor Nervin.
Here. Before we get into the minutes, so just to apologize for the accommodations down here in the basement. We're doing some renovations upstairs, so we'll be stuck down here for a few months. And maybe when fall rolls around, we'll get back up into the newly renovated Christine Nürnberg Hall. First out of the gate here, we have minutes from March 17th.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes carry. First, we have a public hearing for Applied Technologies Incorporated for the city of Mequon. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant for the building and site plan amendment approval to allow for a public utility building replacement of lift station E for the property located at 2010 West Ranch Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of going into public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in public hearing. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak on this item? Sir, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record and
Okay.
speak up so our only microphone can hear you.
My name is Howard Schley, Schlei. If you look at your drawing there and you go up and to the right, that little zigzag sort of building on the top there is the home that I live in at 1935 West River Benton Court. Where I was seated there, I was between two people, and the three of us are the immediate neighbors to the proposed station. I can't speak for the other two necessarily, but as I look at the plans here, they look quite lovely. And I don't think there's much in the way of leeway for making any changes. The concerns that I and my neighbors have are probably going to focus on visual barriers, odor barriers, noise barriers. With the old station, I moved in 1988, I think. We did have to go back and forth with the city quite a lot in those early years to get something done about the odor that was coming from the station, and it was handled, and it's been pretty good. So we would just want to make sure that those steps are taken for the new station. A concern that I'd like to voice now, and I'd kind of like to ask the question, the old station is obviously going to be demolished. Or I should say, is it going to be demolished? I'm asking.
This is public hearing. We don't have dialogue. We'll get to the questions after public hearing. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Well, let me put it another way. I would like to see the old station demolished. I'd like to see that area of the land that it occupies restored to a natural condition. The Riverbend Homes Association is an association of 11 homes in the very immediate area here. And in fact, the station is being built on Riverbend Homes property, making this station a member of our Homes Association. That association was originally built with a lot of outlot, which is good for a lot of natural conditions and a lot of wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife in that area. So we neighbors are going to be very particular about how the landscaping is done and the demolition and restoration of the footprint of the old station. So since nobody's answering any questions right now, I guess I'm done. Thanks.
Staff will get to them when we close public hearing.
Perfect.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Please come up, sir.
Good evening. I'm the applicant. My name is Will Heine with Applied Technology. And the response to the question relative to the existing station, yes, it is the intent to decommission the existing station. As to the ultimate state of that restoration, that is yet to be determined at this point. There are some issues there. There's a berm built around the station, for example, which may require DNR and FEMA approval because of its location in a floodplain. Issues we need to work through. We're at about a 45% design at this point in time. There are still questions in terms of odor, visual, noise. We hope to attenuate all those concerns. There will be odor control in the new station, similar there is to the existing station. Noise, generally speaking, the noise will occur when the generator runs. That generator is generally exercised once a week on Monday morning for about an hour. Obviously, if the power goes out, that's a completely different scenario. But I have to believe that with some of the bypassing operations that have occurred over here over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, that there'll be less noise from that generator running than there will be from the bypass. Provide additional information, but I will just jump on top of staff's report.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're back in regular session. Any questions or comments from the commission? Is there any questions staff can answer that you didn't get out of the report? Maybe Kristen would like to talk about how we're handling some of there was questions on the visual buffering and the site plan. And I know there's plans in the works for the coming months here to involve the neighborhood.
Yes, correct. So there is a landscaping plan that was included just for the site itself for 2010 Ranch Road. Because for the most part, that's all we have the legal right to impact any landscaping on right now. Even the easement for the existing land station, the existing lift station is for the lift station only. So we don't have the rights to landscape or do anything else. But pending planning commission approval, then we will go to the next steps that include working through the legal documents, both to we do have infrastructure that will remain, so we can't vacate the entirety of the easement because there are still pipes under the ground that will have to connect to the new station. But the old station will be decommissioned, so it will be taken offline. Obviously, not until after the new lift station is up and running, but it will be decommissioned and then demolished. But as a part of that, we would have to work with the HOA that owns the outlot on any type of restoration that would be done. Again, right now, we don't have the legal right to do any of that, but this is the kind of first next step of what needs to be done so that we can move forward with that. And that's, of course, both the conditional use grant and the building site plan approval. And then we'll move through those other approvals as they come. Same thing as it relates to any visual barriers. Right now, we only have what we can do on our property, but the intent is pending any conditions of approval through the planning commission would be in early May to have a neighborhood meeting where we could have actual corners for the lift station marked and meet with the residents to look out to see if whether what is done on site is enough, and if not, whether there's requests for others, and then again, working through the legal rights to do that. And then the odor and the noise, I mean, let's be clear, this station is decades, almost a half a century old. So technology alone will take care of the majority of that. But yes, we will certainly have both odor and noise control at the new station of as high as the current technology allows.
Thank you. Commissioner Chorin.
I assume the old station has the emergency generator as one.
It has a dual power source, and then we actually usually the noise is because we bring an on-site generator. This one will have one housed inside the lift station, so it should be more buffered or more muffled from what it is.
Okay.
Commissioner Barnes.
This is a little bit of a broad question. It's coming in the context of my neighborhood where we have a lift station. And I see city crews there pretty regularly. And I realize these can vary from station to station and age, et cetera. What, I guess, is the anticipated number of times city staff are gonna have to?
Well, it'll be
Come in
what it
with-
is now. I mean, the existing station is a couple dozen feet from where the new station will
Yeah.
be. So the neighbors are pretty used to where we're out there. We go out to our station at least once a week. It also depends on whether or not there's an on-site generator there or not, because the on-site generators do have to be exercised so that ideally we don't have station failures that result in bypass pumping, which actually is a big issue with this station that we have right now, in addition to the capacity concerns. So you are right, it is station dependent, but we should actually, once we're comfortable with the operation
Sure.
of the new lift station, be there no more, and if not less than what we currently are, but never less than once. We're out there at least once a week at all of our
And
stations.
it's,
And that's
I
all.
realize there are a lot of
So-
variables into it, but it's just observable. I'm wondering if that was representative or. Thank you.
Mr. Strelcheck.
So my question's more on the line of like, we've kind of walked around, like, we're gonna demo the buildings gonna get raised. Are you anticipating going to, grass and or landscaping where it was?
In
And
the home or the existing station?
the existing station, once a new station is built?
We haven't, again, gotten that far because, well, I mean, I guess at this point I can say we would do grass because that's all we would legally have the right to do. But through the process of the decommissioning of the lift station, because of its adjacency to the floodplain, it wouldn't be much. I mean, we're not looking to change grade or, of course, otherwise impede drainage. I mean, we certainly don't want to be an obstruction to the flow of water. So, but the intent would certainly be to restore it in line with the rest of what the outlet would be. And then again, depending on whether we have underlying infrastructure or not, there could be a portion of the land that's turned back over to the HOA as a part of the outlet, and then it would be, theirs to take care of as they do the rest of the outlet versus the portion that we'll have to keep to maintain some of that infrastructure that's back.
In discussing legal right too, is that in relationship to the HOA or are you referring to other legal rights?
Correct. Well, the HOA owns the outlet, which is where the existing easement is. So that would be for that. As it relates to any other visual buffers, as noted, there are 3 adjacent residents and then, of course, the road on the other side. And that would be what, if there were additional visual buffers, we can only control what is on the 2010 Ranch Road property. But if there was, for example, a request for some plantings on adjacent lots, that's what we'd have to obtain the legal right to do because we certainly don't. But that wouldn't come through a permanent easement. That would just be a temporary easement for installation of landscaping if requested. And then it would be theirs moving.
Do we know when the HOA annual meeting was or is?
I do not.
Might be something to engage them with and make sure that they either, have one of us included if they choose or offer to host them here. As they may have some questions as it relates to this. That would, we have a couple residents, here, but I know that as the neighborhood gets to talking, other people would have additional questions. And I know you're planning an open house as well.
I was gonna say, and that's for the 11 lots that are in the HOA where the existing one is. But we certainly recognize our impact is larger than that. I mean, there's another HOA that drives past this to get to theirs. So we'll have a little bit of a wider cast for that neighborhood meeting to try to ensure that as we move forward to finalize the design, we're listening and incorporating comments.
Yeah, and then with regards to noise, I mean, it's, everything I'm hearing is it'll be less. Everything's encapsulated. And then with regards to the generator, if in a power outage situation, the neighborhood's out. I personally, as a neighbor, would find peace in hearing the generator and knowing that thing was on and, I'm not going to have to look to my basement for issues. So
And it will,
I
it will
understand
be
that as
dual
well.
serve, so we hope, depending on, what happens, but there is no question that in emergency, it is our largest lift station. There is no question that we want that operating, all day, all night, all of the time, because otherwise the sewage will be in everyone's basements, and that's not, what we're looking.
Thanks for everything you put into this. I know you put a lot of work into this.
And just as a reminder, this is just the next step.
Yep.
There are plenty of processes left that we need to go through. This is just the next one as we move forward.
Did we answer all the residents' questions? Was there anything that we left off?
There's one that I didn't ask, which is, does the property for the existing station revert to the HOA? And I think she's kind of indicated that it will, or at least some portion of it.
Sounds like there's discussion in that space.
Yeah.
And ideally it would, with minus any easement that we need to access the underground parking.
If anybody wants to talk to the HOA president, he's here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Any other questions from the commission?
I'd move approval. Sounds like we've got
Okay,
everything.
there's
buttoned
a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Just to clarify, I think the neighborhood meeting is intended to be on site.
That's the intent, obviously weather.
Weather-
permitting, but
weather
yes,
permitting,
That would be the
yeah.
intent, so we can actually stand out there and see what.
It's hard looking at stuff on paper. It's
Yeah.
much better to be on the site. Sometime in May.
We wanted to see, how much impact there would be from this conversation before we started circling dates on.
Perfect. Sounds good. No need to get the cart ahead of the horse. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Questions from the commission? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley. Aye. Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Urbani,
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Mayor Nervin.
Aye.
Vote passes.
I'll look forward to the next step and hopefully have a productive on-site meeting with HOA. All right, on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent, 2 fill permits and a setback waiver. Would anyone like to take any of these consent items off for separate discussion?
I would.
Right, Commissioner Schaefer.
I just have questions about 3A, if we could take that off.
Okay.
It should not be lengthy.
Okay, so we're just voting on items B and C on the consent agenda, unless someone else wants to separate another one.
Move approval on both of those items. Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we'll take up item 3A, Aspen Homes for the applicant is seeking minor fill permit of 4,500 cubic yards to allow for a new home on an existing lot for the parcel located immediately west of 12050 West Bonnewell Road. Your question?
Are all of the lots in this subdivision subject to the same high groundwater such that they're all gonna be built up? So it's gonna is this gonna like undulate? And then we'll just have water in between houses, or how is this gonna be handled?
Yeah, I think there's only three.
Three lots.
The most recent one that was built just east of this one.
Yeah.
So that's the one I was referring to.
That already was
So,
built up.
Correct, and had the high groundwater. It can definitely vary based on the location of
Yeah,
where the house is being built, but yeah, so far seems like pretty good odds.
and there's no. What am I trying to say? They're not gonna wash each other out, but if we're building, it's ostensibly, we could assume that perhaps that third lot is going to have the same challenges and would also need to be built up. So all 3 of them are going to just be built, have to have this fill in order to have it be a buildable lot.
It's possible. Luckily the lots aren't, as
I know.
dense and close, the buildings aren't as close to each other as some other subdivisions, but,
It-
yes.
I think this is not far from Alderman Strelchuk's neighborhood, right? Or is
Yeah.
it, this is far west?
This is,
Yeah,
a-
it's almost Germantown.
This is Wasaki.
yeah, I have it on the GIS screen for you, behind you. It shows the,
Oh.
it's basically Bonnewell and Wasaki.
So are there other, I'm trying to think, there's like a Fox, there's a couple of subdivisions that are just east of this. I feel like if you're building up, the water is gonna go somewhere and I'm wondering who else it's gonna impact. I guess that's my,
The only thing is there's a big parcel of land that was actually part of this original development, to the north. I have it highlighted on the screen. When the developer chose to do this this is probably before I think most of you were on this commission. He chose not to develop that part. That's why they had this long, strange little notch here. That's giving access to the ponds. So eventually what this showed was a road that would come in kind of through here and have a cul-de-sac that would serve the rest of these lots. He chose to do 5 acre lots instead of doing our conservation subdivision. For some reason at the time, we didn't really support it, but they had the right to do it. So that would be the only development you'll see. Eventually, I would assume that this 43 acres will be split up into 5 acre lots. Everything else here though is pretty much as is. They already have all the ponds in, as you can see. And there's some larger vacant tracts around. There's not a lot of development in the near proximity to this area.
How big is the lot we're talking about?
5.31.
5.31.
There's a lot of area for absorption on a 5 acre lot. Even with a huge house, you've got a ton of area for absorption. Most of the water that would come off the roof of this house or the driveway will never even hit the ditch. It'll be absorbed before it gets there.
Maybe to better answer your question, as Jack mentioned, there are ponds here. No matter what elevation they build that house, it's gonna go into that pond.
That's
which
the
is actually
collection.
On that property.
Only bring in brown dirt. That's everything.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission while we're discussing it?
Motion to approve 3A.
Second.
Motion and a second. Seeing and hearing no further comments, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. All right, done with the consent agenda, on to regular business. First up is Super Steel Properties. Applicant is seeking a minor request for approval for a sign waiver to allow for directional signs within the right of way for the property located at 10910 North Industrial Drive. Is Natalie going to give us an overview?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this request is for a sign waiver. It's for 2 signs within the right of way at 10910 North Industrial Drive. Super Steel is proposing 2 directional signs to help drivers with drop off and pickup, because as you can see in the map here, there is kind of some dense tree line there. So the yellow line is the required right of way. That's 30 feet along Industrial Drive. The signs are proposed at 21 feet from the center line. So they're 9 feet in from the required right of way. City Mequon sign code would typically require an additional 10 feet on top of that 30-foot right of way from the center line. There are some exceptions to structures being allowed in the right of way, because typically City of Mequon does not allow structures to be within the right of way. That's in section 6210, which is exhibit A in the packet. Yep. So that kind of lists the streets and the circumstances in which we would allow a sign or something to be erected in the right of way. In this case, there's nothing that applies in this section of the code. So with that in mind, staff is recommending denial of the sign waiver for directional signs in the right of way.
Is there someone here represent? I think I see a Super Steel logo over here.
There it is.
If you'd like to come up and speak,
Sure.
please come to the podium, sir.
We have the 2 signs there, which really are telling our truck companies that come to our facility where to go to the shipping. I mean, that side of the road is quite long. Right now, if we wanted to get into that 30-foot, we'd have to cut down approximately 6 or 7 trees to do that, which we really don't want to do. I mean, that's not our first take in this thing. Where the current signs are, I mean, again, they're off the road by quite a bit, and they are in the spot where we feel like it's the easiest way to see it without ducking it behind a tree or trying to cut trees down. I mean, again, they're decent looking signs. I mean, if you want us to change the way they look or something, that can happen. And we put them in spots where One of them's on the back of, right now, currently the one going south is back on the back of another street sign, so it's not like it's in the middle of it or in the way of it. And the other one is quite a bit of ways from any other like municipal signs or any speed limit signs or anything like that. So we pushed it as far as we could without having to, again, try to knock down some trees or cut some open, take some of that down, so.
And I'll add to that, from having spoken to the owner and the previous general manager, who I think has moved on. Semis were entering the employee entrance and then getting stuck and trying to turn around, and a couple of employees got their car hit with maneuvering semi trucks. So it's a bit of a tricky issue that there needs to be a reasonable solution for.
And since the signs have been up, we've had no issues with that. And we've really, again, I don't know where issues come from or how they're detected, but we've really not had any complaints from any of our current neighbors, other than getting a cite or we can get a citation when we got a reference. So,
Letter.
hey, if you don't do something, we need to give you a citation. But we'll try to figure out the best, if there's some reason for it or a change in sign that you're looking for. We're willing to do whatever it takes. It's just right now, the spots we have them in are about the best to give them room to react without being on the far end of the property where it won't really make sense to what their view will be. So.
This is a loaded question, but to staff's knowledge, are there any other signs in the industrial park that similarly kind of skirt the edge of what's allowable for the sign code, or is this the only instance?
My knowledge is the only one because I am the neighbor that.
Yeah, we have the facility right next door. We have a couple questions from commissioners. Commissioner Schaefer?
Is there anything that would be allowed? Could we do a monument? I'm trying to think of what would be allowed for this business under the sign code? Anything along the
I
roadway?
think nothing, because it's in the right of
Because
way.
it's
That's
too-
the issue. It's not a matter of what's on the sign or how it looks. It's
No, I'm saying
it's
like,
just in technically the wrong spot, but if it were to go in the right spot, it's either gonna not be visible or you need to cut down half a dozen trees to make them visible.
the trees go all the way to the driveway
Yes. At least
on both sides.
on both sides. The ones prior to us, which are right near the public works area, there's quite a few bushes and trees there. We tucked it into the spot. We could, I guess the only other place would be maybe to try to put a huge sign inside the property, but not guaranteeing anybody from the road would even see
They'd
it.
have to turn their heads. Yeah.
Again, these are semi-truck drivers or large trucks. They have to have a way of seeing what's going on and then also react to it without being past it. And that's what was happening before. They would go see it, oh, there it is, and they'd go past it. And now they would try to turn around where our main parking area is, where our employees are, our customers.
Not enough
And it was causing a lot.
turn
of
radius.
Mr. Strelchuk?
We just went through a sign code rewrite years ago, like a year ago or
A
two.
year or two, wasn't that long ago.
Time flies. Seems like a year.
We
probably
just
could've been
went through
5.
it years.
The issue that we have is what we allow in the right of way and what the content is. And if anybody feels that this is a setting precedent for us picking and choosing winners and losers based on sign code, being that it's in the right of way is my challenge as, an alderman that's also sat on that discussion and worked through that previously. I'm okay with a larger sign inside. I'm looking at the street view. I think in the right of way, there's very well maybe an electrical box that's sitting right there. Am I correct?
It's much more to the north,
Yeah.
where our current super steel / Saber manufacturing sign is.
Yeah.
And that's even difficult to see at times because it's lower profile.
Yeah.
And, I mean, other than the building being lit up at night, but
I'm open to a sign waiver saying no truck entrance to the employee as long as it's not in the right of way. I'm open to a sign waiver here if they need something a little bit larger. Within the property so the truck driver can see it. If you got a truck driver doing 35 and they're not paying attention, well, it's their fault for missing the entrance, on that. And there's plenty of those out there, you know,
but even if they are taking it, I mean, even if they are
yeah.
driving slow enough and they're
Yeah.
aware, they still have to be able to react with a large truck. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never driven one, but I've been around plenty of them and I know how difficult that can be.
I mean, my goal is to try to support you. You've been a longstanding industrial business within Mequon. We want to be as reasonable as we can while sticking with the code. But, you've heard kind of my objections that take it into a no vote. If there's any other solutions that would fit, I'm wildly open to opportunities to help you
Can I
out.
ask a question about that? When you talk about the right of way, I mean, right there's our super steel sign.
Correct.
So that, I didn't measure it myself, but I'm gonna guess that's probably within the that's probably just outside of the right of way, where it's very close. Which is okay, but if I go up and down that whole industrial street, I'm pretty confident that there's other sides well within the right of way, if it's the 30 feet on both sides, that there are signs within that have either been granted these.
30 feet from the center line, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not the edge of the road, but I just
No,
brought it
it's
up
not.
here on the GIS here. You are easily 10 feet beyond the
Okay.
right of way.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's probably really close there because it was put there by the previous company, sure. But I know there are other signs if you drive up and down there that have to be within the right of way. So there's either been an allowance for that or maybe was different rules at that time. I'm not sure. I mean, there's
There's
lots of reasons.
grandfathered items throughout the
Yeah,
city
for sure.
on
So that
this
can
and other
definitely be
things
the
as
case.
well.
Commissioner Jordan, unless you have a couple more comments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand why we don't want signs in the right of way. I mean, is it because potentially the road would be wide and there's utilities in it? I mean, what is the rationale? And then understanding that, what if, I don't know if it would be any benefit, to put the sign that you have right on the right of way. Would that, would that be a compromise?
30.
Would it give any help to you, or do we still have the issue with the trees?
Oh, for sure.
So
The trees that we probably required to be planted when the area was developed.
they probably can't cut down.
So the first.
It's probably a
look at the
depends on what
trees there.
Specimen tree.
I mean,
Oh,
maybe we could pull one of the signs, but the one that's, heading north, or that you can see heading north, be able to put it in a spot where they could see it and react to it. I'd almost have to put it on the property of the public works area, which I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I don't want you to think I'm being difficult
I'm
here.
putting on regulatory signs.
We're just trying to find a spot that will allow them to react and tell them that where they're going so that we aren't causing problems. But you can see there that the sign is in between there, right? So if I put it in the right of way, I'm actually going to be in the middle of those trees there. And you probably aren't going to notice it. I'm guessing. We could put it there and see if somebody does see it or doesn't see it, but we feel like we're going to have that same problem. We're going to have trucks in our first parking lot trying to turn around and come back. Is going north, going all the way to the north. Obviously, when you get into that western area, it narrows.
Yeah.
And then trucks have to figure out how to go to the stoplights. And then there's no easy way unless they go back around and then through where the school is, come around to our way. So it's kind of a conundrum, if you will,
yeah.
when it comes to that spot. So
Commissioner Barnes.
Understand very much what you're saying, the dilemma, and it's not uncommon. my profession, I was involved in these kind of issues in different places. But one of the common things that would be done in where there are trees and so forth, oftentimes is positioning a sign kind of, so it's still in your property, kind of on the far side of the driveway. In your property, in the curb return, aligned with the curb return, I don't know what way to state that, as a best fit, because I think there is a fundamental need to keep signs out of right of way, because it does become a complex issue for fair enforcement, if you will, from one property to another. And I'm saying this despite your very understandable concerns. But it's those types of solutions that are sought times. Is putting a sign in the curb return area of your property, the driveway.
Commissioner Hawley.
Couple questions. Do you get the same drivers like coming all the time, or is it always different? Like, will they eventually know where to go?
It's both. I mean, we do have some, I would assume some common drivers for sure, because we have the same types of trucking companies or same trucking companies coming there delivering product.
Mhm.
But we definitely have a lot of new stuff because we have new customers constantly. And if they set up the trucking and they're coming to our facility, they'll even call and we give them the, directions and give them their best information.
Yeah.
But until that driver gets there, you just don't always know how they're gonna act.
Sure.
And we're just trying to make it simple enough for them to see and react without causing others more problems. Because
Yeah.
one of the other things that's happened or has happened prior to the signs was them trying to turn around in other companies. Rockwell had trucks in their area from our group quite often.
Yeah.
And they called us and said, hey, can you help us here? And we said, yeah, we're gonna figure something out.
Hmm.
We haven't had any issues since then, since the signs have been there. So
Mhm.
I understand the situation. I understand what you're trying to, like how you're trying to keep things consistent. I mean, I would welcome some help. I mean, when you talk about going around the curvature, that again, we'd have to be taken, and in this case, where the first corner there is, that's where they come from the south. We'd have to take out those trees for them to even see it.
Maybe clarify a little bit what I'm meaning by that is so it's on the sign is on the far side of your driveway. So that you're kind of taking advantage of that space, and particularly where you've got a street where the speed limit is low enough, you don't have a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit here in terms of
Yeah, it's
vehicles.
tough to break 100,000
There you
pound semi.
Yeah, so that would be right there where he's got it
Yeah.
there. So around that corner. So even if you went across the way and you put a sign there, you would see it if you come down that street, but you're almost already past the driveway where you have to turn. So again, they would probably be trying to go straight and then ultimately trying to turn around somewhere or go all the way around again. Yes, sir. Sorry. I don't get the call.
I like it if you call me.
Sorry, I had
Think that's
I
enough
thought
done.
I thought I had you already. I'm gonna go back. I'm trying to get everyone first.
I get the
Not
call.
done.
couple more.
Yep.
You said one of the signs is currently on an existing street
Behind
sign?
it.
Oh, behind it.
Nothing's
It's not
on an
attached.
actual sign. No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
And then if they were to put their signs in the right of way, do they even have the right to take a couple trees down? We would probably tell them no.
It's okay, as long as they're not
I
specified.
don't think the trees are in the right of way. I think they line the right of way.
Right, but like, would they be authorized to just
That
put their trees
depends.
out?
If they're not specimen trees, correct.
We've had this conversation and I've been out on the site with him too. I mean, the landscaping there is part of their required landscaping plan, just like any other commercial business, but that doesn't mean it can't be modified.
Okay.
So they can revise their landscaping. We can come up with a plan, even if it's just at the noses, to do something different. If it means it creates an opportunity and some visibility of the sign. But that would be an added, plan review. It doesn't have to necessarily come back here. It can be staff approved, but that's technically an amendment that we would have to work through.
Mr. Stoker.
I'm probably gonna be the only one to disagree with the other commissioners. I agree with trying to enforce and keep things enforced, but I also think there's a point where there's a gray area in matters and sometimes you have to compromise. I think this applicant makes a reasonable argument and is showing a hardship. You could probably argue it's a safety concern. I have no problem with them staying where they are. With respect to them taking down landscaping, that's an easy thing, but there's going to be an exorbitant cost to that if they have to landscape large areas in order to accommodate two signs, which to me are not offensive. If I had another applicant came in here and said, hey, you gave them the permission, if they can present a similar hardship, I very well may support their instance as well. I did not hear an answer from anyone as to why the signs can't be in the right of way. Is there a carte blanche answer for that, or does anyone have a good answer?
Well, I
for
think
that?
years ago, when we went through that sign code revision, Brian, our city attorney, basically stated that we shouldn't be involved in taking any sponsorship or any kind of sides on any private, public or private development in the right of way. So we curtailed as much as we possibly could out of the right of way. In fact, even those little blue signs, we limited where those could even go. That's why I even looked on there to see if that was the street they're on. It's in that code section that it shows up here, but that's not even listed as one of the roads. We limited those as well. So I think as a policy and avoid any kind of constitutional arguments, we just try to avoid any kind of commercial signage within our public right of way.
Well, and I think it goes beyond just signage. We're not accustomed to adding structures in our public right of ways. Those are meant for traveling. Those are meant for safety. We're not.
Yeah, it's typically reserved for
Add features.
regulatory signs and things we control, yeah.
Yeah. I still don't change my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. We're not trying to add a structure at the sign. How long have the signs been there?
Since August.
Mr. Strelchak,
How far in the right of way are those, like lilies or whatever?
So basically,
Bushes?
if you look here, this is the right of way line right on here.
Yeah,
So it's almost be at the tip of the nose. So I would say you'd put right here would be the right of way. End of the right of way to private property.
so the lilies are I haven't planted those in my yard, so I don't remember what they are. They're just there. I haven't picked those. To the left of that deciduous bush. You go right here, Jack. These lilies, they look like they're on the right of way line.
Back here,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could they do a up to 4-foot sign there to get over the top of the bushes and still be able to be seen where it says truck entrance and it's on two sides? I think if they did that and trim back the tree that's next to it, it would give the southbound traffic a little more visibility. The northbound traffic would easily be able to see it. It's not far off the intersection, so it would clearly identify the intersection. And it would be out of the right of way, which I think would be a reasonable solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get a sign in this location that would be visible, that would be intertwined with the landscaping there. I think it would look okay. I think the concern he's
What's
at,
the height we can go?
well, our typical are 5 feet for directional signs, but I mean, again, if he's asking for a waiver. But I think the concern is that if you're coming
Is it enough? Right?
northbound, is it enough to see that? I mean, it looks like you're from here, it looks like the view shed, you could see that pretty far back.
Yeah.
you have to make the sign a little bigger than they are now.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with staff being flexible in that spot. With the denial motion,
You're saying put both signs on the same spot?
put a two-sided sign on the same spot, in that spot. I don't know that you need two signs. You don't need to give them, a 100-foot, here comes the intersection. I think most businesses have a truck entrance marked. I go in and out of ridiculous amount of factories each year. And I support industrial automation in my career. So, I've seen a lot of like the signage, and I think that would tie in and probably be better than most of what I'm seeing in the field. And I think it would also accomplish what you're looking to do. I'm not looking for a little postcard sign. You could put a little bigger sign in and work with staff on that. Maybe we identify how many square feet. Now that sign would be in the height, just kind of as a recommendation. That way if staff wouldn't have to come back to this body for permission. based on a couple parameters that we'd recommend.
But you're at the right of way, right? Not 10 foot in. You're at
I'm
the
okay with that, the right of way in
Right up to the right of way?
because it's a
It's constrained.
safety concern.
Yep.
Only because it's a safety concern. Not picking winners and losers on content, which is violates freedom of speech law. And we can't pick favorites and we can't wing it because it becomes disastrous within the city if we start doing that. That is the precedent for every political campaign in the right of way throughout the city from here until
It's a
eternity.
whole series of meetings I wish to never repeat.
Right, I mean, like, respectfully, sir, you have no idea what a disaster it is if we approve it in the writing.
Wow, this is
Just to
different.
come across wrong, but that really pertains to me.
Yeah.
We
right.
didn't think
I
so
get
either.
it, I get it.
Commissioner Urbani.
So just a comment, you said they were put up in August, except, you received a citation in May. So they were put up last May, so they were put up before August. And then a sign, it's in the packet, for this May citation, and then there was a sign request in August. So they were either replaced or placed differently in August, maybe. There was some kind of sign, it's hard to tell exactly what was going on, but there was some kind of sign citation created in May of 2024.
Yeah, we were sent a notice. It wasn't an actual citation.
Okay.
We were sent a notice saying that
Correct.
something needed to change. And the original sign was very primitive. It wasn't really a nicely made sign. So we took it down and we had some new signs put up.
Current.
And then I was talking with her about, while we were going through the process. But then we had a change of leadership and things got a little wonky for a few months, but now we're here, but.
Okay. Thank you
But
for
the signs that are in this.
Yeah, we sort of agreed to slow roll this so we don't have a
And they're both
parking debacle.
24 by 30, so they're fairly decent size and we can make them bigger. That's not a bigger issue, but I'm just trying to figure out if I put a sign where you're saying for the south going north,
This is like a monument.
that might
sign.
work. Coming the other way, I don't know if they'll have time to react to it, so I gotta figure out where that one goes.
So my other question though,
'Cause there's two large trees there before you even get there.
isn't there a DOT sign that says truck entrance? Can that go close to the street? That is a city-owned sign that says truck entrance?
Open to that.
I was gonna say that there isn't one there now that.
No, it
Is
isn't,
there-
doesn't such a thing exist?
Oh, okay.
And then it would be closer to the street and it could be
It's
put
city.
exactly where you need it to for the truck drivers going the proper speed limit to see it and well in advance to be able to brake in time with no landscaping impact.
So you know, when we do that in other considerations, we do so at the cost of them and we won't replace it. Just clarifying for consistency. That's what we do when there's like the check your speed or keep kids alive drive 20.
Okay.
That goes through public safety.
Okay. So just floating that idea. Concept, because that would be closer, I think it'd be very visible and
Well,
it
that'd be
wouldn't be branded.
yeah, it'd be a generic
Black and white.
black and yellow. Is it black and white?
I think they're diamond, yeah, the yellow
The
diamond.
Yeah.
Truck, and it would
Which
not
the
be
bar's
branded,
probably
it
knows.
would not say what door, which is the consideration right now, yours specifies which door
But
to
once
go
you
in,
get
which
in
I
there,
understand
you
would
could
be
do
very
that.
helpful. But then if you had your own branded signs closer to the actual truck entrance after being warned that there's a truck entrance coming.
That might help
That's
quite a bit, actually.
floating that idea, otherwise I agree with Alderman Shellchuk's
Yeah, that
description.
would, that might help. I mean, if they're referencing, hey, it's coming to a truck entrance. Then maybe the
Very
sign
clear.
being there will allow them to.
They would be
react
alerted
well.
to slow down quite a bit
Definitely.
and start looking.
So noting that it's hard to do this on the fly in a meeting.
Yes.
Perhaps, well, we don't want to make a motion to table because you can't debate that, but if someone were to, it could come back after staff has taken some of these comments and work with the applicant to come up with something that works. And we want to find something that works for you because it needs to get addressed, but we want to do it the right way. So in the spirit of not tabling yet. Is there any other comments before someone may or may not make the motion to table it? Commissioner Strelcheck,
I'm okay with staff working within the legal limits to get a little creative on this. I don't know that unless it becomes in the right of way that I need to personally see it again.
if it needs to
Others
come
may
back, it
disagree.
will. If it doesn't, they can just stay
Yeah. Okay.
tabled in perpetuity.
I just want to give that statement to staff and maybe take a straw poll to save a wait for another meeting if staff has concern that they think it has to come back.
If there's a reason for it to come back, it will.
Yeah.
If there's no reason for it to come back, I'm sure staff doesn't want another item on another agenda. It's almost a self-regulating process that way. Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, and not to repeat things, just awareness that the setback outside of right of way, fundamental thing as it's been stated is safety. And the safety is a generic so that there aren't any obstructions, be they signs or trees or what have you. So it's because cars do run off the road or any unforeseeable things can happen. To answer on the signs, there are signs that are used. Generally, it's a truck crossing warning sign is often put in where there are tough circumstances, and they can be a reduced size. The standard size is 36 by 36 inches, and I believe they can be reduced to 30. But I'm just offering that as information and not trying to solve a problem here on the spot.
I guess I would, I think the staff would prefer that instead of tabling the issue, we would come up with some statement about what we would prefer to see. So if it was going to be a setback waiver of 0 on the property line, no greater than 5 feet high, no greater than 16 square feet or something like that, then we would probably better that, because they're still going to need a waiver for this setback distance anyway. So we can't just table it, not have it come back. So if we want to do something like that, I think that would be preferable. And then the right of way stuff, that's something Krista will have to work with how it works, but that's a different issue.
Okay, so perhaps a straw poll on a couple of items. The suggestion for the truck entrance regulatory sign that could be in the right of way. How many are in favor of that concept? I think that's a good, okay, there's some general guidance. The zero additional setback from the normal right of way because of the site conditions and the safety issue. How many are generally okay with that? So, okay. There's some parameters forming here. And then for the non-regulatory sign, the 5-foot height limit.
Yeah, that's typical for most work.
Yeah, it's typical. That's within the standard regs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, typically it's usually 15 or 16 square feet, depending on what you're looking at, either 3 by 5 or 4 by 4 for area, then a 5-foot height requirement. That's what we typically pass.
You're
So,
talking about our sign being that size?
Yes.
oh yeah, up to that big. Yeah.
It's even bigger than I think what we need.
Yeah.
It's an upper bound that if it has to go
3 by
beyond
4
that,
is
then it would come
12.
back here. Yeah. I
3
think
by 4 is 12.
Jack's looking for sufficient parameters
Yeah,
to
just
work it
so-
out at staff level, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have to come back. But if it had to go beyond that for some reason, then it will come
And is
back.
that 5 foot? Like you can't be higher than 5 foot?
Correct. I'd be okay with 12 square
Might
feet.
be a little low for, yeah, sign.
Yeah, I think it'd be okay.
Just good.
Yeah. So if we can't work it out, we can always bring it back if it doesn't work out, but I think there should be some parameters put with the motion, so we have some guidance on this.
So it'd be move approval with those parameters.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, then we'll have to come back in a future meeting.
So I'll move to approve with the parameters that we just agreed on with a maximum of 12 square feet,
12 square feet, 5 feet height,
5 feet high,
and no setback.
no setback based on safety concerns. And I'm going to highlight my concern here. If there's a northbound traffic and there's a northbound semi that misses this entrance, they're going to try to turn around in town center where we've just spent a lot of money and a lot of effort narrowing that street and creating a safe pedestrian space. So having a truck try to turn around and be frustrated and feel lost. And then, the only way back is through Fun Truck.
High
Or they,
school.
or,
Two
yeah,
schools.
past two schools. So, I'm supportive for that reason. And I don't think that there's going to be a lot of cases in the city that are going to have those kinds of safety concerns if a truck would miss an opening.
We have a motion.
That motion that's very lengthy.
I will second.
And justified.
Does everyone understand? Motion, okay, just a lot to unpack there, but if everyone says they understand, they understand.
Does Robin understand?
If staff misremembers anything, they'll check with me. So I'll be the checks and
Keeper of
balances.
truth.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I have one. Who do I work with?
Staff.
Um,
That doesn't,
Yeah,
that's
I
not a
think
name
Natalie's-
of a person. Yeah.
Natalie
know
will be the
staff.
first line of defense, but then, others will assist as required.
Broad term.
Natalie.
All right, we have a motion and a second and no further comments or questions.
You've been talking.
Okay.
Did you send her
You get a vote.
Yep.
information?
Please call the roll.
Oh, I think-
Yeah, she should have.
Commissioner Barnes,
No.
no. Commissioner Rabani,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Hi.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Alderman Strelcheck,
Aye.
Mayor Nervin.
Hi.
Vote passes 7-1.
All right, on to Kenton Jasic. Applicant is seeking a rezoning recommendation approval to allow for zoning change from B1 Neighborhood Business District to R4 Rural Residential District for the property located at 10806 West Freistadt Road.
So this is for a rezoning recommendation and land use plan amendment for the property at 10806 West Freistadt Road. The rezoning would be from B1, which is neighborhood commercial, to R4. The site currently has a single family home that was constructed in 1860, and the applicant's looking to make improvements to the home, but they're limited by the 50% value because the use is non-conforming. The chart within the report kind of shows the comparison between the B1 standards and the R4 standards, and then what the existing conditions on the site are. That kind of aims to show that rezoning this to R4 is not going to make the non-conforming lot size issue any worse. It's actually going to bring it closer into conformance with R4 standards as opposed to B1. It'll also bring the use into conforming. There was a similar rezoning on this street from B1 to R4 a couple years ago, I think. It was a little more clustered with other residential areas. So this is somewhat centralized in the B1 area. But again, it's a fairly small B1 cluster and there's residential properties pretty peripheral to this site. So with all of that in mind, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning recommendation and land use plan amendment.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Barnes?
Just to start, I support what you're recommending here. The question, is you make a point of this is one of the few remaining 1900, homes in the city. So I was wondering what historic features could be lost with the modern amenities allowance that we're giving. It's a broad general question, I realize, but what would be
Yeah.
sacrificing community appearance?
From my communication with the applicant, what they've expressed is that they're looking to do mostly interior renovations to the second floor. So at this point, they can speak to this, but I wouldn't see there being exterior changes that would be made. I think it's mostly kind of to modernize the inside of the home and make it a little more safe for their family.
And to be
Yeah.
clear, this isn't on the
Not historic.
historic
landmark.
register.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they get to do what they
landmarks.
want.
Right.
We have some representation from the Landmarks Commission here.
It's simply, it was the point made there
Yeah,
among the few, so.
Yeah.
What would we be giving up? Doesn't sound like anything real.
And even if we were, it's not a protected site
You don't
anyway.
get to
Yeah.
decide.
Mr. Strelcheck, do you have?
Move approval.
Well, got a motion, okay.
At a microphone, it would have been really loud.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. Congratulations.
Is that your house?
Whoever house it is. Oh, okay. I love your neighborhood.
Me too.
Great meeting.
All right, now some wonderful policy
This is
items.
heavy.
Yeah, so first up is Lake Michigan Bluff. And,
Yeah, this is,
is Jack gonna walk us through this?
Yeah, Greg got excused for this meeting. He was here last week. Started and then it got tabled, so I had to take over. So, basically, there was some discussion at the last meeting about, liability. I think our city attorney did put a memo in the report saying that we are not liable for this. And there was some concerns about the testimony from the designer. I don't know if he's here tonight or not, but he is. So if he's willing to speak, we can listen to him. And then we just can discuss some of the issues that you guys didn't have a chance to vet fully because the packet was a little bit off in terms of delivery last time. So I guess we'll just leave it open for questions. And if you want to go up and speak to the microphone.
What does Jack need from us tonight? Just direction.
I'm Andrei Sitarski, general manager and partner of About Nature LLC. So open for any questions you have.
I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting, so I wasn't there, but I think there was some desire to talk to someone in the industry who's done similar types of projects. The staff's just looking for more feedback, or is it?
Well, there was questions last time because the packet was a little delayed getting out, so I think some of the commissioners were concerned they didn't fully vet all the application materials. So we're here just answering the questions. I can give you a little refresh on what we're looking to do here. This is for allowing structures, not just type of application, but for any structure on the bluff, so it meets certain criteria. The concern with the bluff is that it's constantly moving, it's unstable, and we're concerned about liability issues. So we basically put the onus on a registered engineer that would have to sign off on this. And we would only inspect it to meet zoning requirements. We would not inspect it for any building code requirements because we can't ensure that those things would last over time because of the constant moving of the bluff. So this is something that came out of committee of the whole discussion. Again, I don't think staff's fully supportive of this type of application, but if it's on the onus is on the owner and the contractor, I guess we're just concerned about, again, liability from our end, trying to have inspect these things and long-term care of them.
So we are looking for a recommendation from the planning commission to forward to council.
This would go to common council. Yes.
Okay, and it was tabled last month.
It was tabled, yes.
So before we talk about it too much more, is there a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. A motion and second to remove it from the table. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we can talk about it more. Just before we get too much discussion at the commission level. So I'm fairly up to speed. Questions from the commission where it left off last month. Commissioner Chorin.
Well, one of the things that struck me is that we're talking about modifications to a bluff or particular parcel, right? And I keep coming back to,
No, not particular parcel. Anyone who lives along the lake would be able to follow these and install such features as they deemed.
okay.
Individual
warranted.
parcels
Yeah,
get
this
to
isn't-
decide.
There's more than one person interested in this type of thing. There's not many, but
But I still come back to, I don't know if some years back when Concordia did their work along the shore, it supposedly, I don't know if it was ever really determined, it affected the properties down the shoreline. So how do you deal with that? I mean,
this isn't a revetment or modifications to the lake, which DNR has jurisdiction over. It's only to the bluff. I think there's a little bit of mixing of those two issues.
Yeah, well.
The impact of properties
the
down.
Shoreline and bluff are gonna keep.
Well,
keep
yeah,
changing,
nature's
you know.
gonna keep on winning. That's what nature does.
Yeah.
But the thing that affected the neighbors down, there's a current that prevails north to south down the lake, and everyone south of the structures that went out into the lake were impacted because of that. But that was a DNR permitted thing because it's below the, the ordinary high water mark. Which none of this affects that. This is all on the other side of the ordinary high water mark of the land portion. Commissioner Urbani.
Without going too deeply into the engineering and how this works and how it would be built, could there be any risk to the neighbors if somebody installed this on their property? Are there setbacks? Would there be setbacks so they put it in the middle of their property with an access down to the lake and something happened and it collapsed or pulled out? Are they putting neighbors' bluffs at risk?
We do have a setback requirement. They have to meet the general setbacks, and the engineer who certifies this is certifying that it's not causing an impact. So it's really coming down to that person's stamp that's going to dictate whether this thing is stable or not. So, and I think that's where there might not be a lot of that are willing to sign off on this type of application, but this is the only way we could see doing it where we're still protecting adjacent residences, because not everybody has the frontage that Concordia does on the lake. So.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
That makes me think of the question, are there, and likely there's lots that are too narrow that they wouldn't be able to achieve the setback, even if they were right in the middle of their property.
They
because
could achieve the setback, but they may not be able to achieve the other requirements of the code in terms of the height of the structure, because you're doing switchbacks, and it can only be, we have it 5 feet high above the deck and then 15 feet from the bottom of the deck to the bluff. So you might run into an issue where you can't do a switchback, or you can't really get all the way down. You have to stop halfway down because you just can't have enough space. So every property is going to be different because the slope of the bluff varies.
Yeah.
The height of the bluff is pretty consistent. It's about 110 feet throughout that whole corridor, but slope varies tremendously from one property to another.
I'd imagine if your bluff is super steep, you probably don't want to build on it anyway.
Yeah.
But-
well,
But 110 feet, you say is kind of the norm.
yeah, from what I've seen, about 100 to 110 feet is our typical bluff height throughout that whole length.
Commissioner Stoker.
What if any inspection scenarios would there be by the city? None. It's completely dependent upon someone building per the engineer specifications.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have people with expertise in this thing, so
Right.
it's kind of why it was crafted that way,
It'd
to
be dangerous.
put it on someone with a professional engineer stamp, and then it's their license that's on the line. not
There's also
anyone
no
else.
building code that dictates what a stairway has to be on a bluff.
Right.
So there's nothing, we'd have to incorporate that in our code if we want to adopt like UDC stairways into that. But I think the more we get involved, the more chance that we have a liability risk. I think that's what our inspectors kind of said, let's just stay out of it completely.
So will you be involved on the front side? You've got the engineer report, you're gonna look at it, make sure the engineer is building it to some standard, meaning the 15 foot above the grade and that, are we even gonna look at it at that level?
We
Or
would
is
look
it?
at a plan set when they submit for the permit. It'd be like a zoning permit. They'd have to show it, and then we'd probably go out and verify, yeah, that's how they built it. But
Okay.
we would not be looking at it for structural stability
Right.
or anything other than what the zoning dictates in a code.
Commissioner Schaefer.
what did we do? What did the city do for Vermont Park?
We never permitted it, never was approved.
We never permitted it because the county never asked.
There's
They
a
just-
disagreement on whether we have to, who has jurisdiction over.
The county claims
Is it
they
the-
don't have to follow our zoning code. We disagree, and we've been at loggerheads over that.
Is that why,
Ever since it
is
was
that why
proposed.
it's not done? And there's like that weird little, sorry, it's not, it's not
Yeah.
done.
It's done.
Since when?
It's done.
Yes.
It's been done for, yeah.
They have a flip up ladder at the end.
Yeah, the flip up ladder is part of the
Water line
permanent
and
solution
storm.
It's a retractable ladder, which
because
can be
of,
lowered.
in case the water goes up and.
Well, that's to
down?
control access on heavy surf days. They can keep
Yes,
people from
from-
getting down to the,
And be very with.
since it's a public space. Yeah,
That is not accessible to everyone. It is steep. Okay.
it's not, yeah. It's difficult to get.
If
get
you have
around pretty
mobility
good. You
issues,
can't-
like, I
can't
mean,
get
you wouldn't
down there,
probably
but-
do those there anyway, but. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And to be clear, the zoning changes we're talking about don't envision that we're only going to use the type of system that's employed at Vermont. It allows anyone to come up with any
Whatever they want to
idea,
do.
as long as they can comply with standards put forth and the changes here that are proposed.
I mean, I don't know how. This is their property, right? How do you say, it's just that the bluff continually comes up as an issue where people get big mad because it's a tenuous topic, right? It is ever changing. It's going to
Well, it's-
continue to be ever
It's
changing.
people's private property. We're just trying to give them as much right to enjoy it in the way they want to.
And I don't know how much.
And
we
it is
have
not
to say.
without risk, but it pushes the risk to the property owner and the engineer they hire. And we're trying to be as accommodating as we can.
And there'll just be civil war along the bluff against the people who are all mad at each other for building and not building and changing each other's.
Again, if
Landscape.
anyone's mad for what I legally build on my property, it's not a me issue, it's a them issue. It's their property.
We had an alderman who was pretty mad about Concordia, I recall.
Commissioner Strelchuk.
So the question when this first came up that I had is, in the instance, so we all know, like, high water was what, 3-4 years ago? And we started hearing about erosion issues and, it was in storm events where you get a surge, and I've kayak surfed at, South Beach in Fort Washington, and, there's a beach until there's a storm with, big waves, and that storm surge comes up several feet, and you're almost crashing into the trees in that instance. So that mixed with high water rains and things like that creates bluff erosion. We could have somebody build something, it'll be perfect for 20 years, and then because the water's low, and then the high water level comes up, and we get a few good storms, and that bluff could just erode in a hurry in places where we maybe don't expect it. My concern initially was if the bluff erodes where there's one of these structures and it's damaged, what is the protocol for either removal or repair and timeline? Because I'm not comfortable approving anything without those 3 parameters in there.
I think
And I
the
don't-
changes do contemplate the responsibility of the homeowner or the landowner to remove the damaged structure.
We have a neighbor with 15 cars in their driveway for
Well,
5 years.
Yeah, I don't think that having happened with one bad egg should dictate the policy for the.
No.
Yeah.
But
And we'll
if it
take them
goes
to
down-
circuit court just like your neighbor.
they should have a timeline in which they either need to repair or replace it with the approval of the permit. If there's damage to it. To the point where it's
Can I add-
unusable and unsafe.
Comment to it?
Sure, yes, please.
First of all, the system is divided into a number of sections, where every section is attached individually on both sides to main cables.
Mhm.
If anywhere on a bluff, some dramatic event happen, they're not gonna wash away or go down, they're gonna just hang. Because they have a separate adjustments on each side, if that is gonna be sufficient, they can be brought up back to their position. In the worst scenario, just the one section has to be rebuilt, not the entire
That's how
system.
So with a city permit, I would want to see a timeline in which that would be properly addressed. Because a half-built stairway is a safety hazard. And if we approve it with no mitigation on that risk and a unique enforcement situation, I'm concerned about it.
Yeah, right now, it's just number 9, just basically says property owner shall maintain the structure to avoid becoming dilapidated or in disrepair or debris or unsightly, dangerous, unsafe. No timeline associated, which we would go through our normal process of issuing a letter and then issuing citations. It would go to the courts in the way every other citation or any other violation does right now. So there is no, I mean, I agree
Are
with
you
your
comfortable
concern.
with that or?
I'm not comfortable with this at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for my first.
Me either, so I'm trying to just make sure we have a little tooth to it.
I just think that we could handle the enforcement, and if they don't comply, it could drag on. Like you mentioned, some other enforcement cases, that could be the case no matter what.
And we would only know that there's a problem if someone complains.
Yes, because we don't have really any.
It's always
public
I
access,
agree.
We don't need a
Right.
city vote.
Well,
Well, not yet. You can always add one to the budget request, which we'll probably deny.
Give it
Commissioner Urbani.
So number 7 does say that property owners shall certify their awareness of potential problems. And so we could beef up number 7 to say something about a timeline. But it says a memorandum of said certification, including the legal description, shall be reported in the office of the Register of Deeds. So if somebody complained, as per number 9, that it's becoming dilapidated or in disrepair, then we have this memo that says you certified that you knew this could be a problem and that you would have it inspected on your own volition or on your own dollar within, say, 6 months or something like that.
But you're still gonna have to go through the same enforcement process, even if they don't do it.
Because this is the permit doesn't last forever, right? This is a they're applying to get a building permit to put this thing in, to put in something, and then it's dissolved, then it's their private property.
I think we need to
after that.
focus on section 9 here. If we want a timeline
Okay.
after the event, then we can put a timeline for them to submit their plan to correct it if there's catastrophic damage, repair or remove said structure.
Because but I think you can tie in number 7 somehow, that they have certified that they acknowledge that this is a dangerous.
Well, I think they're gonna sign that when they get their permit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
then
they'll-
it's gonna be filed though. We'll have it on file.
Yeah, we'll have it on file no
Yeah.
matter what.
Right.
Just by the way this is laid out. But number 9, I think we need, want to put a timeline on that. I think that it's not, there's a normal matter of becoming dilapidated or in disrepair. But I think there's the more pressing concern of a catastrophic failure due to a weather or act of God event. That, one's pretty straightforward. The other one, half the bluff goes into the lake. What do you do with the other half of the structure? We could simply put a requirement for them to report the event and submit their plan to either correct it or remove the structure within 90 days of the event. It still relies on them to report it, but it puts some teeth in there that you got 3 months to disclose that there's
And
been
if
a
they don't report
catastrophic.
it, we're just gonna start the 90-day clock once we get the complaint from the neighbors, so.
Yeah. Well, it'll be, you have a major bluff issue. It's gonna make news, probably. We'll know.
And the document that gets recorded with the Register of Deeds holds the city of Mequon harmless from everything, correct?
Well, that's what the attorney's review of the memo on the last 2 pages talks about. That we are not, by issuing a permit, we're not assuming any liability.
I would incorporate that right into the document that gets recorded, because if these properties change hands, which eventually they will do,
Right.
that needs to be very clear to anybody purchasing that property.
Yeah, we can have him vet that final document. We'd have a template for everybody that did this and make him sign it, so he could vet that in any language he wants to protect him.
Let's take that note, make sure it's the template for the agreement we have.
By putting a time frame in that responsibility, did we just take responsibility again?
That's what I was wondering.
But time frame, the owner's responsible. They need I'm guessing they'll need some time to assess it and decide if they're gonna fix it or remove it. And I think 90 days sounds reasonable.
To the timeframe
October, November,
of the
January.
season, I mean, the fact that it's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
have-
Well, it doesn't mean you'll do it by then, but you'll know what your
You'll
plan
figure
is
it
to
out.
do it. Yeah, yep. Create a plan to,
Yeah.
So the assessment itself. Rather than a
Not the fix.
follow-up act.
yeah, not the actual fixing of it, the assessment of what you're gonna do. Yeah. Mr. Strelcheck.
I think the plan within 60 days is reasonable. It could be a plan that happens in October, November, and they can't even do it. My plan is to work with my designer. We're going to address this immediately in spring and start on repairs. We'll provide the city with costs. I mean, you can give a reasonable plan to the city within 60 days. I really don't want to see a partially built staircase. And then I think the tooth in that is, if the repair isn't addressed within 1 calendar year, abandonment and removal is at the responsibility of the homeowner. homeowner.
A year now, that seems like a long time frame.
Trust me, like this happens in October,
No, that's the actual completion of the work.
completion of the work, 1
To
year.
address it.
They have 60 days to tell you and 1 year to get the work done at the absolute maximum.
They have a failure in say May. And so then they let it sit for the entire summers, fall and going into winter, and it could be causing more damage as you go. I understand you want to put
I'm not
timeframes
trying
on
to
there.
give them a gift of a year. I'm trying to like,
I don't think we
Hold it
can
to the
foresee
day.
every circumstance either.
That's why I say it, we use it in discretion when we do our enforcement procedures the way they are right now, and I think I would prefer to just have it, the discretion to do that instead of putting artificial timelines.
that's fine. It's fine. As long as it doesn't get lax with a safety issue.
Oh, we'll push it as much as we possibly can, but again, once it's getting, if it ends up going to the courts, it's out of our control at that point anyway.
You know, I think if it becomes unsafe and impassable, they have to find a way to secure that and block that off so that it's inaccessible immediately within, 7 to 10 days of when that happens, whether it be a rope or a chain with a sign. I think we identify what that means.
Well, these are private facilities, so someone would be,
And someone would be trespassing.
someone
and
would
then
be
it's- is
trespassing
it
already
negligence or
if
is
they
it?
were there. This isn't Vermont Park. I think you have to keep that in mind.
Getting closer to a no vote on all of this
Right?
as we get more lax.
It's hard.
But I'd want one if it was my house.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, there's
And
a,
it's my house, so why are you telling me?
there's also an HOA who had one and then it fell into disrepair and lost it and they don't even have the right to rebuild it. So,
In Mequon?
yeah. Very chasms.
Hmm.
It's been an issue for about a decade.
Forget that that's a
So,
recommendation.
well, it's for their private use. It's not open to the public. So don't go over there and use it. Are there any other questions? I think we have a
I don't know what we
a
have.
recommendation to add a timeline to part number 9.
Yeah.
Which will get incorporated into a motion when there's a motion.
The
And
cost
you can
is-
make a motion and still not
I
vote
guess
for
if
it,
you
but
wasn't really-
you want to make sure the motion is made the right way. Commissioner Shorn.
There was another comment about reinforcing cities.
That's for the form, not the ordinance. Yeah.
The form would be registered, that the applicant would sign off, and that form holding the city harmless would go to Register of Deeds.
That's already in there.
Yeah, just making sure that that was buttoned down in the right way.
What about if there's people who get to the bottom and there's an injury or they can't get back up, which I actually have seen at this, I'm gesturing to you because you have knowledge of this, but
There's a letter from the
I
fire
saw,
chief.
he
Says
said
there's
there'll
no
be,
concerns. It'll just take longer to get them up than if they weren't at the bottom.
yeah, but are there extra costs? Do we somehow say, hey, if you have guests that you have a party on the beach and they
We have-
can't get back up?
We have all the rescue gear to handle those situations. Because we have
I'm
to.
just trying to make
we have to
it so that
serve-
they really think about this
we have to
before they
serve-
do
We
it.
have to serve Vermont Park and
Yeah,
There was the same issue, if I can interrupt, we were at Vermont Park and, we work with them and they have a additional device which they can use in case of.
yeah. Sleeping Bear Dunes
I hate
charges
to say
you
this, but they'd welcome
$3,000.
they'd welcome the opportunity to be able to put their training into practice, actually.
Well, goodness.
Oh, God.
Well, they
Not
don't-
volunteering to be. a guinea pig,
they
I'm
don't
just
like
letting you know.
having all the training and not being able to use it. This would,
But the one more add to it is definitely safer than kids sliding down the bluff.
Yeah, you're right about that.
and that was happening for many years at Vermont Park, so it wasn't like there
I
weren't
was
people
wrong.
down there.
Getting stuck.
Or they'd go over to the Ozaukee Washington Land Trust land where they put a hemp rope that got them down to the bottom, and then they go up to Vermont Park anyway.
Resource.
Or they'd trespass in Ferry Chasm and walk up, yeah.
All the above.
All the above. When you have kids of the right age, you hear about all of it. And you have to go la, la, la. I work for the city.
Our kids are in the stairway era.
Any other questions or comments? Or a possible motion?
Still like it.
This is not a bad thing.
No,
Not inherently bad thing.
I'll make sure it's done right.
All right, I can,
Who wants to make the motion? Does anyone want to make?
So
the motion?
the motion would be except for staff's comments and adding a time frame for,
address.
I suggested 90, someone else said 60 days.
A plan to address any, you don't have to address the issue itself, but have come, like, say, we are going to either repair this or we are going to,
In the event of a catastrophic
That's
event, yeah, a plan within 60 days
within 60 days.
to repair or remove.
what do you want?
Right.
Yeah, repair or remove is good language.
Right.
We just don't want.
I mean,
Okay,
yeah, we're approving the language on 153 and 154 of the packet with regard to the code change. Now, if you want to make any modifications to that, this would be the time to do that.
I think that was the proposed amendment for the time frame on number 9.
Number 9 is the timeframe,
60 days
60 days.
Yeah,
to
to
repair, yeah.
create, have a
60
plan to
days for a
repair,
Plan, right?
plan
For
to,
the plan,
Plan to it.
but
to repair or remove.
are we putting, Strelcheck said a plan for actually, other than a.
Well, the
time for
plan would
actually doing
dictate,
it.
the plan would dictate the time
Staff
frame.
wanted the
And then-
opportunity to.
Staff would have to approve
Timeline,
it.
so it didn't wait too long. Because the flexibility of when it happens with winter is.
Yep, season.
It kind of
Makes.
Yeah, if you get a flow of ice blowing up from the lake and it goes 30 feet up the bluff, can't do anything until spring,
End of days.
it's gonna take additional time. Yeah.
60 days too long. Is the only question. To come up with a plan.
2 months, it'll go.
On property.
I think if anything, it's too short, but that's why I said 90.
Slow birds, or that they don't even happen.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll make a motion with the 60-day. You did? I'll
You just
it.
seconded it,
Second.
okay. We have a motion and a second.
I'll second what you said.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none,
Was this, was it not mine on the website?
actually, would you like to come up and speak, sir? And then, yep, name, address, the whole 9 yards. Yep.
This proposal is somewhere on the website that I can.
The whole packet is.
The
packet's
the
up.
entire packet
Yeah,
we're
it was
working from
okay.
is on the website.
I didn't see it on the website. Okay.
Hearing and seeing no other comments, please call the roll.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Urbani,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Holly,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker,
Aye.
Alderman Strelcheck,
Aye.
Mayor Nervin.
Hi,
Vote passes.
on the council. All right.
Recommendation.
Next policy item, thank you. Ordinance 2025-1680, an ordinance amending City of Mequon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 58, Planning and Development Regulations, Article 3, impact fees related to the imposition of, impact fees related to the imposition of impact fees, park impact fees. Little circular language in there. Recommendation forthcoming from the Planning Commission. Wait a minute, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
This is reading like it's a common council agenda item. Okay,
But that
thank you,
was-
Excella.
It just was at Park and Open Space Board last week, Planning Commission.
Okay,
tonight,
what did Park and
then
Open Space Board say?
Assuming there's a positive recommendation, then it would flow through to the common council. For the record, in the midst of packets, we weren't able to update that the Park and Open Space Board did unanimously approve. The ordinance itself is twofold. Number one is to request an update to the amount of the park impact fee based upon the needs assessment study that was completed as a part of their comprehensive plan update, and contemplates modifying that fee from the 2007 dollar value of $900 to the 1793 that came out of the needs assessment study that was available online and went through Park and Open Space Board. And then the other portion of the ordinance is really just cleanup. There's 3 impact fees that are still referred to in the ordinance that have been collected in full and no longer are charged. And so it just contemplates deleting that language that is no longer utilized or applied because we have to go through a public hearing and this ordinance process. We might as well take advantage and clean up the language while we're here. But the biggest fundamental change is that update to the parking impact fee.
Okay. Any questions from the commission?
Mm-mm.
Been almost 2 decades since we
18.
adjusted the park impact fee.
That was gonna be my question. How come it's been so long?
That's a good question. Because we,
I can't speak to
Haven't been
anything
forward.
except for about the last 10 years. And the 2019 comprehensive plan update suggested that there should be a needs assessment study, that the impact fee, and then we had COVID and no one had the stomach to
Okay.
go through and.
so we thought it was a good idea, but it recommended more info. We didn't have more info than,
Yeah, so statutorily, it has to be done through a needs assessment. We don't get to just do like a market rate comparison or say it's been long enough, it should be more than what it is. It has a statutory process that looks at demographics, what the impact is gonna be, what the needs are. So the 2019 study again recommended that process, but we basically immediately hit COVID and there wasn't the stomach for anyone to go through and look at increasing fees. So it was with the next version of the comprehensive plan update that we,
That's the heart of the circumstance.
Commissioner Strelchak.
So confirming 1793 per unit, one single family house would be 1793. A 10 family building would be 17,930, correct?
yes.
Approval. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We can keep on talking about it if there's more questions or comments. Hearing and seeing none. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Holly,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker,
No.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Bonnie,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Mayor Irvin.
Aye.
Recommendation carries through 7-1.
On to Port Washington Road zoning.
So yes, we've been talking about this for several years now. Back in 2023, the Economic Development Board and the Common Council vetted a proposed zoning map for the corridor. This is right when we started this idea of having a market analysis done. So we waited until the market analysis was complete before we did any further work on it. After the market analysis was complete, it went back to Economic Development Board. And they looked at all the criteria that she laid out in her report in terms of what she recommended for zoning changes. And several were adopted, several were not. One of her recommendations that she originally said was she thought we should have one zoning district for the entire corridor, which staff did not support, the Economic Development Board didn't support. So in lieu of that, we tried to clean up as much as we possibly could. So coming out of Economic Development Board, the ones that they recommended were allowing larger square footage and 3 stories on the east side of Port Washington Road, consolidating zoning districts as much as possible, determining appropriate locations for future residential along the corridor, and eliminating a majority of office uses in the shopping center retail zoning district. So what you have up on the screen is kind of our map that we created. It's similar to what we had previously in terms of the B2, B3, B4, which you've heard before, but I think we haven't decided on names, but some of it don't fit anymore. So as you can see, we try to make the east side of Port Washington Road between the freeway and Port Road to be more of the greenish color. That's what we call a large scale. This is our old B4, but our B4 was titled Business Park, so Business Park really doesn't fit the category anymore. So we'll come up with a better name at one point, but right now we're just calling it our large scale zoning district. And then we have it on both sides. And then the areas where we couldn't actually do the large scale zoning, we left some of the existing zoning in place, but we modified the text to allow for those 3 stories and for the increased density that's stated in the market analysis. So then, and we also created a couple new zoning districts. One is the yellow on there, which is our shopping center zoning district. That would be like basically the pavilions and the little cluster where the Ace Hardware is at Han and Walgreens. And then we created a couple overlay districts. As you can see, that's really kind of hard to see on there, but they're the striped ones, usually at the intersections and then where there's existing uses that we want to incorporate in the overlay district. So basically, this is a way to control the number of gas stations and fast food restaurants with drive-throughs. So those are limited only to that overlay district. Before we even got this far, though, we had to go back and look at our uses, and there's a big use chart in here with a lot of information on it. All of our zoning districts had different names for different types of uses. Some said professional offices, some said office, some said medical office, some didn't. So we try to consolidate and create categories, and this is the code that you see on the sign. It's based on the NAICS code. So we try to incorporate all those different zoning districts into the same nomenclature for all the different zoning districts, and then we created the different B2, B3, B4, large scale shopping center overlay district and what's permitted or not permitted. So we went through this, and some of the things I'll just highlight on there that we decided upon was, like, for example, the second one down, automotive parts and accessories. We made that not permitted in any districts. So the economic development board felt that we should not allow our retail to have those types of uses because we should have better retail uses than that in those districts. We did allow the new car dealerships to remain as a conditional in the B4 in the large scale. We also allowed gas stations as a conditional use in the retail overlay, so that the gas stations would only go in that overlay district, so you couldn't do them across the entire corridor anymore. One big one that you guys always talk about is banks. So under finance and insurance, we have a couple different categories. We have permitted ones, but then we have ones where drive-through has to be in the rear, and then we have permitted ones in the B4 and the shopping center with no drive-throughs allowed at all. So if you're putting a bank in the pavilions, you really can't put a shopping or a drive-through in there. So, and then we dealt with another favorite topic is food establishments. So we broke it down to full service restaurants, limited service eating places, and limited eating places with drive-through. So for those, again, we made the drive-through not permitted in all the districts except the retail overlay. It was conditional. And then for the limited eating services, we allowed it to be permitted in the shopping center district. We've gotten a lot of over the years, Jersey Mike's, all those Taco Pros. We make them go through the conditional use process. It's the same conditions for all of them. So we just made it permitted in the shopping center district. So those are kind of some of the highlights. At this point, we're just looking for original feedback. One of the things we do have to go back through is vet, make sure we're not creating any more. One of the directives from the council is not to create that many non-conforming uses. So we have to go back once, if you're okay with some of the language, then we have to go back and vet all this to make sure we didn't create any non-conforming uses by mistake. So I've gone through it once, just on a broad brush level, and I think I've corrected most of them, or I've identified most of them. But we'll have to go through and fully vet this before we go any further. So this is kind of our first crack at it, and it's mostly up for discussion. The other item that came out of the market analysis was this idea of incorporating residential uses along the corridor. So here we didn't feel like we should put those in the actual zoning district. We felt the land use plan should dictate some of that, so that in the future, if we were looking at residential, it would be consistent with the land use plan. So these are the sites that were identified as not, when you say residential, that's a single family. So it's multifamily, it could be senior housing. So these are the sites they identified them. So this is an office site next to Freighter Clinic. This is all that those individual little two-story offices behind Town Square. Now this would be something that would have to be a whole-scale redevelopment. We wouldn't just allow individual development there, but as part of the land use plan, it's the flexibility of the land use plan to allow that and put statements in there saying you could only do it if it's a large-scale redevelopment. This one is Steins, which may surprise some of you, but there's residential right next to Steins. There's a lot of condominium development right next to Steins, so we thought that was a good option. And then here we have the Chalet Motel, which market analysis actually identified that as a mixed use. We did not want to put mixed use in this code like our town center. We just felt that was too much. So we identified that as a potential land use plan amendment. Then there's a vacant piece further down. This is called the Day property down in here. It was a business condo, which has been vacant forever, never been developed. We thought that would make a nice location for potential residential. And then at the very end of Port, there's a bunch of consolidated retail uses. Again, if somebody came forward with a major plan to do something more residential there, we'd look at that as an option too. We just didn't feel these were ripe enough to be in our zoning code at this point, but we wanted to give a nod to the fact that they could be done. They could go residential in the future, depending on certain situations. So there's a lot in here. I just wanted to kind of get your feedback if we're going the right direction. I think the biggest change for us would be, again, allowing these 3-story on the east side of Port Washington Road and Yeah, we try to consolidate the zoning districts as much as possible. We do have some land use patterns that are there. The corridor's been there for a long time and there's been established patterns. So we had to kind of, unless we wanted to make everything non-conforming, we had to kind of respect what was out there. So it's not as clean as it could be, but I think it's done pretty well where it kind of takes into consideration the existing patterns and what we want to see in the future. So for that, I'll just open up for any questions you may have on any of the details in the packet.
The 3-story is not limited to residential, it can be for anything,
Could be for
east of Port.
Correct.
Yeah, I thought there was some justification for having some increased density there, but instead of forcing things into sprawl and crowd, just just east of the road, stuck between the freeway and Port Road, thought, let that give some easing there and let that go up a little farther, rather than see it sprawled to the north. It really can't go much farther south.
And it's a common land use technique.
Yeah,
And
and it'd be different than town center, but
for that
it's
type-
working reasonably well in town center. It's already reasonably dense over there anyway, so.
3 stories only if all 3 stories are occupied.
Why would you build something and not occupy it?
Ask me about my favorite bank.
That's not really a third story. At
It's a
Close.
atrium.
least it doesn't have a lit logo on the inside of it. That is west of the road, by the way. Only east of the road, as proposed. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those unused outlots.
Yeah, part of the market analysis, I put the memo in from the from the EDB memo back in February, and there were several specific sites she identified in her analysis that could be utilized as redevelopment or just additional development. Sites 1 and 2 are basically the Marcus Theaters and the Metro Market parking lots. They both have a substantial amount of parking there that goes unused, and she thought that would be a great site for some, again, she actually recommended fast food, but I think our tolerance for fast food with a drive-through would be less. So we established that as a non-fast food or non-drive-through fast food type of use, so limited eating establishment. You mentioned the office development in Mequon, which we talked about for potentially residential. That's a good place for a hotel or entertainment complex, which would fit under that large-scale development zoning. The Bank Mutual site, which is obviously a nice redevelopment site, she thought that would make a nice place for a drive-through with restaurant, which that one is part of the limited service overlay, so that would fit in there as well. Diane Garden Center, she had it for a restaurant or entertainment complex. I'm not sure restaurant, that's kind of a big site for a restaurant, but entertainment complex maybe, but we also put that in for the residential. The chalet I kind of mentioned a little bit, and then the other ones are ones that we talked about with adding the residential as well. Now, some of these, again, this is long-term future. We talked about even the idea of doing a redevelopment authority for the city, which the Economic Development Board of the Council don't seem to have much appetite for. So again, this is going to be all market driven. So this could take some time to redevelop. So it's not going to happen overnight. But if somebody does come along at one point and has the initiative to acquire some of these properties, then there's at least going to be some direction on what they can do with this going forward. So.
What does the process look like? How long does this take?
Go through this?
Yeah.
Well, depends. I mean, we're gonna have to reach out to the property. That's one thing, because some of these properties we're changing the zoning district categories, but we're also changing some of the zoning on some of these properties. So we're gonna have to identify them, let them know they're being rezoned. 3 to 6 months, I would say, to get this all wrapped up, So, but this is just another step in the process we're going through. So the hard part is gonna be if we do identify any non-conforming uses that are out there, then we'll have to come back and revisit some of those ideas. I mean, I think eliminating office from the pavilions makes sense, but the B2, there might be some office uses that we're not really knowing about that are out there that we have to address at that point, so. But we've been working on this for like 2 or 3 years, so it's another 6 months doesn't seem too bad, but yeah.
As long as it doesn't go past
Yeah,
6 months. Commissioner Strelchak.
What's the need? So 2 things. One, I don't want to see more drive-through, fast food, just in general, and Metro Market parking lot, it was called out in the text in the packet, that was an option there. So
That was, I think he just said it was
Gym and the
that
theater.
was her request.
non-drive-through.
We modified it to not allow for the drive-through, but
Okay.
we're okay with like a limited service eating establishment there, but no drive-through.
That'd be
So the drive-throughs, yeah, if you look at, it's hard, I know it's hard to see on the packet, but if you zoom in far enough, you can kind of see the striped area. That's the overlay zoning, and a lot of those I had incorporated existing, like, so like the Shell gas station, that's an existing one. Taco Bell is an existing one. And then it's usually just noted around the corners. And then some of the, like Arby's obviously now has a drive-through, so we allowed but we try to limit it as much as possible, so there wouldn't be a lot of a proliferation of those types of uses going forward in other areas.
So, I mean,
They're freaking out because Taco Bell isn't there anymore. Dunkin'.
Well, Dunkin', yeah, so I called the Taco Bell building.
Okay.
No.
And then,
Pointed.
so here's my one hesitation. So we're talking about 3-story, and I can see that in certain cases, but once you approve it for 3-story and it's zoned for 3-story, developers technically have a right to build 3-story structures with a use that they come forward with that conforms closely enough to the code. Otherwise, the city's at risk. What's the driver for the 3-story versus
I think that came out of the market analysis, just the value, creating more value, creating more density in those areas between the freeway and Port Washington Road. They felt there wasn't a lot of impact to residential around you. So that was the whole, and I know this will be a big change for the council because this is something that's been in place for years, but and we understood that it would probably be the most controversial item would be that 3-story.
Yeah.
But you just thought that we're missing out on a lot of value by not allowing that location.
that property to the south, I mean, you can't do anything with it unless it's 3-story. Just other than residential standpoint, you could never, ever make it.
That's not big enough.
Yeah, it's too
Right.
constrained otherwise, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're stuck in this little wedge between
Yeah.
a big road and a really big road.
Plus, very frankly, 3 stories gives you some sound buffer from 43.
Yeah.
More attractive sound wall than Bayside.
So I guess what I'd like to do is see the 3-story stuff categorized and a call out as to what would be, potentially allowable without being overly restrictive, I think.
Well, again, everything along from the freeway to Fort Road that's commercially zoned or residentially, well, in the land use plan, it's different, but all the commercial zoning districts call out 3 stories as permitted. And for like the shopping center, since the shopping center is only on that side, that's already pretty obvious. But some of these other zoning districts have zones on both sides where it specifically says there for properties east, it's got to be, it could be 3 stories and 30%. And we also reduced the open space ratio to 30% versus 40%.
Mhm.
But it could be any permitted or conditional use would have the ability to go forward on any of these zoning districts for the 3 stories. Now, again, council may not support it at the end of the day, but this was a recommendation coming out of the market analysis and out of economic development board.
I'm more open to the 3-story residential if it's tastefully done in different places than I am, 3-story bank or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, from the commercial standpoint, I guess I'm skeptical of whether you'd see a lot of 3-story commercial. I think
Yeah, I mean,
it invokes putting the elevator in and there's a lot of additional expense to it. I think people are more likely would take advantage of that open space ratio being 30% versus 40, because then they could do a bigger footprint of the building, but I don't see a big proliferation of 3-story non-residential uses along this corridor.
I think what I'd like to see just for 3 stories, that there's occupancy of a certain percent on all 3 stories. Again, I don't want to see a big atrium, a 3-story atrium because it's allowable. If you have a certain percentage of, square footage that needs to be occupied, then they have to use it.
Well, that's something we could probably handle in our design guidelines section of the Port Washington Road, which we're also working on at the same time. That would be a good place to put that, I think.
Yeah, as long as it's clearly identified and council and planning commission isn't put into an awkward position where they get a plan that's close enough, but they really don't know how to say no.
They'll still try to put us in an awkward position.
Well, anyone has a right to ask for anything they want, right? However, putting some guidelines in there helps everyone in the process, including the applicant. Right? They don't come forward with something that just wouldn't be reasonable because it's not zoned such. Planning commission and council aren't put in an awkward position because technically it might be zoned for that. And we really don't have a reason to say no, but it doesn't quite fit. And we find other reasons to make sure that, everything else is in compliance. So I think I'm looking for a little more tooth in that one space.
Well, I'd say a couple things. One,
I'll bring it up at council.
yeah, I would say that one thing to vet is look at the different land use, the chart categories, because if there's something we don't want on this list, we could take, I mean, again, this was based on our current code and what it allowed. So if there's something that we just don't feel it should be in one of these zoning districts, this would be a good time to identify it. We can adjust as we go forward, but I took out, like I said, I took out the automotive parts one based on the economic development board recommendation. I limited other ones. Like again, the new car dealerships and hotels and motels, we switched those around too. Those are actually allowed B2 and pass. So we got rid of that on B2 and we made that allowable in like the large scale zoning district. So we kind of played with some of these. Again, it's a lot of work to go through and make sure we're hitting everything. I'm sure we probably missed something along the way, but we can always adjust and fix that later as well. But so if there's any of these other types of uses that you want to see or you don't want to see, then that would be a good time to let us know. And again, we'll as we threw this out to a lot of the last, we've had a few days to look at it. So I think we'll bring it back next month and we can discuss it further if you want to kind of vet it a little bit more.
The other thing is the square footage would be allowable. Is there a minimum or a maximum? With the 3 stories, are you?
Yeah, that was changed. That was changed as well. So basically we would allow 30,000 square foot as permitted. If you look at the, it's on packet page, starting on packet page 175. So it would be allowable for 20,000 square feet and 2 stories on the west side of Fort Washington Road, 30,000 square feet and 3 stories on the east side of Fort Washington Road. And then that also goes into the B3. They're a little bit different because B3 already allowed, but those are pretty much similar. I think I tied those together, and the only one different would be the large scale, which is shown as B4. Those would be allowed, be not exceed 40,000 square feet because they're already at 40,000 square feet unless approved as PUD, which is what we didn't have in there before. So we just kind of winged it at that point. So, but now it actually specifies that it has to be through the PUD. So for a while there, we didn't allow big box, but we were not allowing it based on denying conditional uses, which was kind of a dangerous thing. So I think we're at least clarifying some of that language as well.
The only other thing I'm a little skeptical on is like the hotel. Like, I don't know. Like you're saying large scale development, but like north of Mequon Road, even on the east side of the street, I don't know. I feel like that should be like south of Mequon.
Well, it's a good segue because I believe Economic Development Board is talking about an RFP to analysis of needs analysis on a hotel on this corridor.
Okay.
Well, we're not picking a site, we're
No,
picking a
picking-
user, yeah.
Yeah.
Every hotel I know is 3 stories or more.
I feel like we had that come forward and shut it down.
We did.
Yeah, we had one proposal for a hotel, which.
Now it's a
That's the Lumia
elder
site.
care.
Yeah, it's Lumia.
Well, that's quite a bit north.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
A
and
lot farther than this site.
it was a buildable site. There was a
That's an
proposal.
active proposal now.
No, that was a proposal
That
years
was
ago.
years
They
ago.
came forward with the consultation and they just didn't get good feedback and they walked away.
Yeah.
I think they wanted 4 stories too, if I
was-
remember correctly.
It was too much.
Yeah, every hotel I've stayed at in the last 2 years, and I've traveled a bit, has been at least 3 stories.
Yeah, hotels are typically gonna be higher than the 3 for the most part. Once you get that third house, put the 4th one on right away. Obviously, that much additional, get the income out of it, but I guess we're just trying to make a determination whether we actually have the warrants for a hotel here or not as well, so.
Sure.
Yeah, that'll likely get studied this year if people vote for the market analysis.
So my deal on the occupancy of the 3rd level and a certain percentage ties in with large atriums. I'm thinking of that Harley dealer on 94 south near
So
Racine.
by Kenosha.
Where they got the bikes up high. I just want to make sure that we don't zone ourselves into an issue like that moving forward. I want to make sure that there's strict and clear intent on the fact that it's not designed for that. It's designed for people that actually want to occupy the space and have it as, usable, square footage for a business. or residents.
I think we can handle that through design guidelines and zoning, probably both.
I think that.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
When you do the assessment on the hotel, is it, you said for that zone or is it citywide?
It's for,
No,
for
this,
Fort Washington
this
Road.
specific area.
It's
Yeah.
basically the whole TIF
Fort
area
Wa-
and a little
Fort
bit
Washington
further to the
code.
north, right?
It's actually being presented to the Economic Development Board tomorrow morning, so you could look in the packet what the draft RFQ is, but it's meant for the Port Washington Road corridor, essentially in this same boundary, and it was a recommendation as well out of the market analysis. She gave some preliminary feedback about, the room, somewhere between 60 and 100 rooms, 4-star hotel likely, but she wasn't equipped to do a full-blown analysis, so it was one of the follow-up recommendations she had. And so like the mayor said, we'd like to kind of assess that this year if we can.
I asked the question because maybe that corridor doesn't support it, but if you look at the industrial park in central Mequon, they're looking, they're all staying in hotels in Brown Deer or downtown.
Right.
So I think it needs to be a broader look than just in that corridor, and that's why I asked the question.
The RFQ actually tees them up to look at attractions, both like seasonal events, but also attractions, and then talk to the community and do data on what kind of users in Mequon have the peak need for rooms. So
Yeah.
they'll look globally at what the community's needs are and expectations,
Yeah.
but then focusing on potential sites.
Yeah.
And then
Well-
we identified in the RFQ the same 13 redevelopment sites that, I mean, a lot of the work that I think the assessment would do, the demographics, the site,
Yeah.
potential site selections are already identified. So I think that would be helpful if we select.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand there, but it's not necessarily where we'd want to build it. The freeway access is
Yeah.
something for hotels are
So they'll
looking
look
for
at the
too.
demand
can't see-
community wide.
4-star hotel going anywhere else.
Yeah,
I mean,
Can't see it going in industrial.
yeah, that's something that's underserved in the city and
Right.
people ask for it on and off all the time. When are you gonna do this? Well, we're here. We're gonna think about doing it.
You should list hotels, upscale hotel.
That's a good
All
idea.
right. Any further comments? We're just providing feedback to staff
I
at
could
this
take the
point.
motel section off.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Apparently it says hotels and motels.
Yeah, maybe not much.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna, you don't have to give me any feedback tonight. If you don't have any more, you could send it to me over the next month or so. Just email me with questions, comments, concerns, or any of that stuff, and this won't be the last crack at this, so you'll have a couple cracks at this again, so. More of an
You
introductory.
guys did a good job. This is a lot of work, I think.
Yeah, it was
I
a
think you
lot,
cleaned up quite a bit.
yeah, it was a lot with the zoning,
Yeah, it's taken a while to whittle this down, but I think it's,
40 years of text amendments and change.
well, between some of the stuff we did ahead of the market analysis and the market analysis and some of the meetings after that to try and hone it down, I think it's getting there.
A lot of,
Sure.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
We appreciate you.
Any parting shots on this, or we'll take some homework home and,
The only thing I didn't say, I didn't include in this was the JCC pool site, because I understand that there's a either accepted offer or purchase on that from a developer.
Yeah.
So that one may be something that we'll have to go engage with them individually, but we left that off here because it was zone residential, wasn't even zone commercial. But we may be seeing something in the future for that development, so we just left it off anyway, so. They'll have to fight their own battle on that.
okay, can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Any other comments? If not, move on to announcements. Next meeting, Monday, May 19th. Same time, same lovely accommodations in the basement. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone not in favor? Okay, we're adjourned.
Anyone, right, so.